Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Carlisle Community Forum. This is an hour-long broadcast that's sponsored by the Carlisle Council on Aging and supported by the Minuteman Media Network. And our objective over the next hour, as you know, is to update you on a great many things that are going on in Carlisle that support the aged. In the course of that, we'll have several updates from our wonderful staff here at the Council on Aging, but we also have a special program today that I'll tell you about as we introduce our guests. I'm going to go across the stage here and tell you who you'll be hearing from today. On your far, it would be your left, I believe, right? And starting is Jace Tilton, who many of you know, almost probably all of you know. Jace is a member of the Friends of the Council on Aging, and she'll be talking for a few minutes about what's going on with the Friends in support of the Council on Aging later in the program. Next to her is a familiar face of David Klein, who's the director of the Council on Aging, and David will be updating us on the highlights of what's happening with the council at the present time. Next to him, the most familiar face to all of us is Angela Smith, who's the Director of Programs and Outreach for our Council on Aging, and does the work of probably 5 people, okay, in a myriad of programs and other support things that are going on. But more than that, the personal touch, I think, that's really unique about our Council on Aging, where she knows virtually all of the seniors and is able to support them in a really unique and personal way. So we'll hear a lot from Angela today about programs that are going on. Next to Angela is a familiar face, Debbie Bentley, who has done an amazing array of things for the town and committees related to public safety and the pathways and the energy initiatives that we have. And she's back today to talk to us for a few minutes, I think, about Earth Day. Is that right? Okay. Earth Day, I remember Earth Day started when I was a senior in high school, I think. Was it 70 or 71?
Yeah, it's 50 years.
71, and I remember that. And she'll talk a little bit about that. And our special guest today, as you know, we have a special guest in each one of these programs to give us a little bit in-depth discussion of a issue or program that might be of particular interest to seniors. And we're very fortunate today to have, excuse me, Marianne Nelson, the Director of Housing in Concord, with us. And we'll have a conversation about what's going on with housing in Concord, which we'll obviously talk about the programs that are available for the aged, but other programs in Concord. I think it'll be having my short discussion with her relating to these programs, I think it'll be really interesting because as we are not Concord, we're an independent town, but we're closely affiliated in terms of the people we know and the way the governments work. So it'll be interesting. This will be a very interesting discussion. Okay. With that, what we do is, I was remiss. I wanted to say Happy New Year, okay, to everyone in Carlisle. We're headed off into 1920 now, and
2020.
2020. 1920, that's probably where we're headed, 1920.
Well, that's true.
Off into 2020, and from all accounts, I think it will be an interesting year, okay? I think one thing I think about when I think about this coming year is the level of anxiety, I think, will be constant and present throughout the year. So my one thing I say when I talk about the new year, separate yourself from the television and the news regularly and relax and enjoy and focus on those things that you could actually make a difference with versus those things that just annoy you on the television. So, and let's make it a great year for everyone. With that, I want to turn it over to David Klein, and David, at the start of our program, usually hits sort of the top line things that are happening with the COA.
Thank you, Tim. I know we've got a very chock full of information meeting today, so I'm just going to jump on one thing that is seasonally related, and that's our transportation is affected by obviously, by the weather. So our winter weather policy, the general policy, and Angela can comment on any specifics if there's more, is that if the Carlisle Public School is closed due to weather, then normally all our rides that we have or exercise classes will be canceled. What we've seen twice in December was that the Carlisle public schools were closed, but town hall opened 2 hours late, which I think has been a little bit different than we've seen in the past. And what usually happens with us with our programs?
Normally, if they're closed, we will cancel them if it's an exercise class or transportation. With lunches, it's a little bit more complicated because we've arranged for the food. So that depends on whether the weather was known well in advance and we had enough time to change it. But people can always call our main line and we'll update and tell them what's going on or not going on.
Yeah. So a general rule of thumb is the school, but if you have questions, call.
Right.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And always use good judgment. I mean, if you are anxious about going out,
That's right.
perhaps choose not to go out.
That's right, Tim. I mean, we've had people tell us that when we cancel something that they are actually relieved because they would have felt the pressure otherwise to actually go, even though they want to go, but they also are anxious about going out.
Yeah.
So try not to be anxious. I understand that. I get anxiety when the weather's bad coming up too.
And don't always base it on the amount of snow, right? It's
Right,
these
could be icy, exactly.
These ice storms we're having are really, in some ways, much more dangerous relating to falls and slips and all that than is the snow.
Exactly. And the last thing I want to mention is also slightly transportation related. Our Chenal grant, which we had funding a subsidy program for Lyft rides. Lyft is like Uber, for those who aren't familiar with the firm. It's a ride-sharing firm. And we have been discounting through this grant rides up to $10. So to go from here to Concord, for example, if it's a $12 ride, we're subsidizing 10 of those $12. From here to Concord, you would, if you register for the Lyft program and you don't feel like driving one day, then you can go to Concord for basically $2.
That's not. I mean, I'd go to Concord for $2.
Yeah, exactly. No, well, look, we all know that, if you want to shop, you're going to have to go outside of Carlisle.
Yeah.
If you need to go to Emerson, you're going to have to go outside of Carlisle. And it just is what it is.
Yeah.
But, up to $10 off is up to 4 rides per month.
Yeah.
We have closing in on 60 people that are currently taking advantage of that program. It's for people age 50 and over. 50, we normally use 60 and over, but this is age 50 and over or age 18 and over if you have a disability.
And my assumption is if they need it, someone here could help them with the app a little bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have people that are familiar with how to install the app as well. That's true.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim. So anyway, I'm turning it back over to you guys. And
Okay, thank you,
there.
David.
Sure.
David will be back, as will Angela, for the hit parade of what's going on around here. But right now, I'd like to turn it over to Debbie to talk a little bit about Earth Day.
Yes, thanks, Tim. I'm here on behalf of the Carlisle Garden Club, who are organizing an Earth Day celebration actually all the way through the spring. The highlight will be actually on Earth Day, where we have organized a community discussion. In fact, they're more like 10-minute TED Talks for people in the community to share their knowledge or their experience of how their lifestyle has changed to do with climate change, or perhaps they're doing research into a sustainable issue. The submission for talks is still open. We have a call for speakers. It's still open for another 2 weeks. If you go to our website, carlislegardenclub.org, all the information is right there on the front page. And we're looking for speakers on serious subjects and sometimes on quite light subjects. There are lots of things that people are doing and hidden in Carlisle woods to do with climate change. And we'd love to have a really diverse range of topics discussed. And then on the Sunday following Earth Day, we're having a much more family-friendly orientated day to do with anything to do with sustainability. And that's at, well, hopefully, if it's a nice day, it'll be on the Common. And if it's not a nice day, it'll be in Union Hall. And that's very much more family orientated. So we're, as I say, we're looking for people to help with that day, on the Sunday, and also speakers for the Wednesday event on the 22nd of April.
Okay, so highlight the two big days again, and
The 22nd of April is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day.
yeah.
And the 26th of April, which is Sunday, it'll be Sunday afternoon,
Yeah.
is a festival on the Common. Fingers crossed if the weather behaves.
Well, thank you and all for your colleagues for doing this, you know. I was thinking about it as you talked, and if at that original Earth Day, we could have some picture of what the reality is today, would we have had a little more urgency? I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, when people say, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, no, we don't. But there are people who, I think, incredibly prescient in terms of Earth Day and the focus on that at that point in terms of what was going to happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think I'm still in my 50s, so, but if you take 20 years on from today, I'll be entering my most vulnerable years. And we have to, and the climate emergency will certainly affect the outcome of my life
Yeah. And
in the future.
just thinking about Australia right now is unsettling, what's happening there. Yeah. So thank you all for doing it, and doing it in a way that's engaging and fun for people.
Well, it's
Yeah.
bringing the community together.
Yeah.
That's one of the key aspects.
Because recently, I think the message that it's not a particular thing, it's not just, CO2, it's a way of living. It's a way of living that people have to adapt to, and that's I think what you're doing is great in that
Thank you.
regard in terms of soliciting input. So thank you very much. Okay. Great. Our next part of the program, which will be, we're going to have a little discussion here. Usually they last somewhere between 15, 20 minutes, something like that. And as I mentioned before, we're very fortunate to have Mary Ann Nelson with us, who is the Director of Housing in Concord. She's actually, we were talking a little bit before, she's actually worked for the Concord Housing for 23 years. I know when people say those things, it's a picture of your life, right? And then for the last 5 years has been the director. She was saying that it's changed quite a lot in the last 23 years in terms of both what Concord is and the socioeconomics of Concord and what housing does in Concord. So with that, I'd like to let her just start off by talking a little bit about about housing in Concord and the work you do. So I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes, and then we'll have an interactive discussion.
Thank you. So Concord has several programs for individuals and families. We have both state and federal funded housing. For seniors, we just have state funded housing, and it's for folks who are 60 years of age or older or that have a disability. The biggest change for us this year is that we've gone on to the state centralized wait list. That means that an applicant can go on and apply online, open up their own account. They can select different communities that they would like to live in, and then they can also go on and make changes to their application, household composition, or income or address changes, and they can also check their status to see if they're still active or not. For that program, one person cannot make over $62,400, and for two people, the income requirement is $71,400. That program also has no asset limit. That means if you own a home, you can still apply. What we do is we impute that asset at 1%, and we add that into the income, which doesn't typically bring people over the income limit. The wait for that.
So sometimes it's very, in that, when you're thinking about that, it's good to give a little example. So, yeah, if you.
So, well, I mean, people can have, you can have money in the bank, and you can have investments, and then we take the actual amount that you're receiving for income, like interest or dividends, and we add that into the income.
So let's say a person had an income of
Yep.
$60,000, just to say that, or 50, or whatever's easier to do the math with. And how would that work with the assets in terms of qualification?
They would not be disqualified unless the interest that they're making off the asset exceeds the income, the $62,400.
Okay. Okay.
And if they're taking a distribution, that distribution counts towards their income,
If
correct?
it's a regular occurring distribution,
Like once a year.
like once a year, typically, yeah, once a year. A lot
you
of
say
people take it, a
distribution
lot of
from
people
an
take
IRA
it
or
once a
something?
From
month.
an IRA.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that
according
is
to
counted as
Is
income, and
income.
a lot of people get confused and think that that isn't.
Yeah.
Well, there's formulas that we're supposed to apply to that, depending on what they've invested themselves and then what they've earned on it. It gets a little complicated, and it's more on a case-by-case basis. We really go over the file with people.
So when that happens and they come in, you work through this
We'll
all
work
with
through
them?
it with them.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of different scenarios, and it's difficult. I mean, we have some folks come in with some significant assets, and they don't think they're eligible, but in fact, they are.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Since we don't have a housing coordinator, can somebody go to Concord and apply?
They can go to Concord and apply. They would not be eligible for a local preference, which means the wait would be very long without that local preference.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. They have a variety of programs in Concord, apparently, and Mary Ann can talk to this, some are for the aged and some are for families.
Elderly.
It's, elderly, that's a better word, elderly, and some are for families. Okay, and availability is a little bit different for those two. You might want to touch on that. Yeah.
So I think what we were talking about earlier is that for our family units, we have less and less local applicants. And that's really because the income limit is so low that most folks wouldn't be able to live in Concord on that anyway. But for seniors, however, we still have a long list of Concord seniors, fairly significant list for Concord seniors.
And so how many slots are there of housing, and
So
how many
we
people do you
have-
think are on the list?
Right. We have 80 units
Yeah.
for senior housing.
Yeah,
On the list right now, we have about 250 people.
yeah.
Vacancies, maybe 2 or 3 a year. So, you can see that we don't have a lot of vacancies.
Yeah, is there any hope in your mind that there would be more available
Well,
housing?
Our goal of our board is always to increase housing. That's always their focus. Our mission is to, to manage what we have, but also to develop more. But the opportunities are not great. We don't have a lot of land and a lot of opportunities in Concord.
Right.
We just did a rehab in 2013 when we took the old Peter Buckley building, which was a congregate site, and there were 36 units, and the building was in disrepair. And we were able to convert them into 28 single one-bedroom apartments. So, and we're always looking for ways to develop.
So when somebody comes in and is sort of faced with that, okay, you have maybe 2 or 3 or 5 a year or whatever, and they got a long list of that, does your office then help them with what alternatives might be?
We do our best. We don't like to send anybody away discouraged. We like to give them hope that there are other programs out there, but we do have a Section 8 program. That's a federal program. We administer 85 vouchers. For that program, you just have to be income eligible. There's no age requirement on it. But we do have several seniors that are also on that list. With a voucher, they can go out into the community and rent an apartment. They pay 30% of their adjusted gross income toward rent and utilities, and the housing authority pays the rest. That's also a very long list. Again, they do get a local preference, though, if they live in Concord.
Quick question, Mary Ann. The first list, the one that's 250 people long, does that include just Concord residents?
No, that's statewide, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and when you say it's managed, you just You just signed up for the statewide preference list? Okay. Tell me a little bit about that. How does that
So
work?
the centralized state wait list is, you can manage it, it's sort of self-managed. You go on, you apply, and you select from several different communities where you'd like to live. And then also there's emergencies and veterans preferences. There's different preferences that change your place on the list and change people's place on the list. But, I mean, it doesn't really, the centralized list doesn't really make a difference in terms of Concord folks, really.
Right.
You're still going to get that local preference. It's just that you are going to have a lot more emergencies on that list because people self-certify. But we do, in the final screening, we're able to decipher who really is an emergency and who is not an emergency.
So if I weren't from Concord, you know, it's from another town, and I want to get on this list, then you can choose, what did you say, up to 5 or
Oh, no,
something?
you can choose as many. I think there's over 130 housing authorities that are on that list. So you can choose as many as you want. But typically if you're from around here, you're not going to choose Springfield Housing Authority. You're going to choose, the communities in this area.
And then somehow the state determines
So each
who-
housing authority has access to that list. So, for example, Bedford would have access to that list. And folks who live or work in Bedford are going to be on the top of that list. In Concord, you're on the top of our list. So each list is going to look different depending on what local preference you.
Okay, so what this does, it sounds like, is that the state has allowed people sort of equal access to applying,
That's
but
right.
there is almost always local preference to the list.
Emergencies always go to the top.
Yeah,
Veterans always get a preference. And then local.
so tell us, it's not directly related to the elderly, but tell us a little bit about the other side, the families, and how much housing is available in Concord and
So, we have federal housing and state housing. We have, I have to think about it, probably approximately 45 units of either state or federal family housing. We have scattered sites. We have some single-family homes, some multi-families, some duplexes. It's the same local preference, veteran preference.
the list is a little shorter for that. you
The
said.
list is much shorter for that, yeah,
Yeah,
much shorter.
yeah. In some way, that's good to hear.
It is
Right,
good,
that
yeah.
at least one of the lists is a little shorter and that there's
And
a,
we often have to go outside of Concord to fill those units.
yeah.
People still do get a local preference. Our two-bedroom list is very long with quite a few Concord folks on it, but not our three-bedroom.
We chatted a little bit, change the subject just a little, one of the things that you want people to go away with, and one of the first things we talked about is if you're elderly and you're sensing that you're going to need a change, and then either short, medium, or medium, long-term distance, it's good to get your name on the list,
The
right?
lists are long, and so many times people come to us in crisis and say, oh, I have to sell my house, or I have to move within 3 months, there's really nothing we can do. So we always encourage people to get on the list. It doesn't hurt to get on the list. When your name comes up, if you don't need the unit, then that's okay, but sometimes it's at the right time when you really might need it, and you're already on the list.
There's no
so.
downside, right?
Right.
Yeah. And what we also talked about is some of the other issues related to people I know in Carlisle, and I'm sure in Concord, they're living, they love their house, and they've been living in their house, but it's just gotten to be a little bigger than they want. And as they look to what the options are, they're thinking about what it's going to be like. And we talked a little bit about that. So what this housing,
Yeah,
change
first
is
I
gonna
want
be-
to say, I understand most people do want to stay in their homes. Carlisle, I'm sure, is no different than Concord. Everyone wants to stay in their homes. Unfortunately, in Concord, and it sounds as though Carlisle too, is a very supportive council on aging, and a lot of different agencies that will, support people to stay in their homes as long as possible. But when that's not possible, the units that we have are all, they're small, but they're basic, and they're well-maintained and well-managed, and 24-hour emergency, and so,
and I think people, as we were speaking, I think people sometimes, even though that they treasure the space that we have and the ability to access outside environment, the accessibility to needed resources might balance that, right?
Well, all of our units are in walking distance to town and to the library and to shopping. And as I said, we have a very supportive council on aging that provides transportation. But we also have a lot of open space in Concord, and it's also access to walking trails, community gardens. So it's kind of the best of both worlds for some folks. At that point, and it's also a community. There's all other people looking out for each other. There's, sometimes I think people feel safer when they
Right.
get into a
Well,
community
when,
like that.
when you can't, as the progression goes and you may be either not driving or driving less, I think the accessibility actually gets you outside more than you would have been here, right? Would have been in Carlisle, yeah.
Mary Ann, if somebody from Carlisle got on the list now, do you have any idea for a senior how long the wait would be?
It would be long. It would probably be several years at this point by the time we got to out of town.
With several.
7, 10.
Mary Ann, if they had an emergency, how many years would it be?
So it depends. Emergencies, obviously, they go to the top of the list. The definition of emergency is pretty specific, and there's a lot of documentation that's required. It would depend on whether we could grant the emergency or not.
Would loss of house be an
Loss of
emergency?
house, yep, depending, usually, yes, that would. We'd just have to see the circumstances around it. I mean, the problem with emergencies is that everybody is an emergency, but a lot of times by the time they get to us, so we have to really be careful to make sure it's a true emergency.
And what would you categorize that with? What would be general?
So, I mean, homelessness, obviously, if someone is in a shelter, domestic violence, there are some medical priorities. It really just depends on the situation. We have to really take a close look at it and make sure it's properly documented.
So if in your mind, you actually feel there is a safety issue or an economic issue that is going to cause me not to be able to continue to do this, those are things that could constitute an
If there's
emergency.
imminent
You should talk about it with
homelessness,
somebody, right? Yeah. Well, as we end here, what's interesting I do with people a lot, particularly I find it in people in town governments, very interesting answers, is what is it, when you think about your job, what's the best part of it? What's the best, most rewarding part of it? And then what's the most frustrating part of it?
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious. The most rewarding part is when we can help someone who really needs it. People that are just really rent burdened and can't afford. I mean, their rent is taking up the majority of their income if they're on a fixed income. And being able to give them peace of mind and a nice, safe place to live. Obviously, the frustrating is the flip side when we can't help people, when people come to us and they're in a desperate situation and we don't have anything available, and we can't even say that we will have anything available.
Would you say that those frustrations have increased?
I think for seniors, yes, I do, for seniors, particularly in this area where market rates have just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And it's just impossible on a fixed income. I mean, if you have some assets, you can supplement, but they go pretty quickly with the rents that we have now.
David?
Marianne, do you see any downside to what Concord did going on to be part of the Massachusetts online system?
Well, I think if you talk to any housing authority, they're going to say yes to that, just because they feel as though there are so many emergencies that are applying, and it pushes the local people down more on the list. But honestly, what we're finding is the majority of emergency applicants, when you start screening them, they really aren't, because they're self-certifying that they're an emergency. If they're a true emergency, they should be at the top of the list, and we should help them. But, when we look at our list now, we can see 50 emergencies, but when we really start screening, we might find 1 or 2. So I think we thought it was going to be, it's more work for the housing authority, for sure, administratively, to screen the lists, but I don't think it's causing us to really delay in helping our local folks, no.
Well, it's, I think it's pretty much accepted now by almost every business executive and state government official is that the two significant crises that the Commonwealth faces is affordable housing and the ability to house the workers that we need within this economy, and secondarily, the transportation, the ability to move people around. So the work is really important. And I think we all do a debt of gratitude to the people who do it. So thank you so much for the work that you do, helping people with in Concord and elsewhere attain housing. And we appreciate the work you've done. And thank you very much for coming today and talking
nice to
about
be
this
here.
with us.
Tim, I just want to add that Mary Ann generously provided us with information on how to apply and the qualification. And Minuteman Media Network will be putting that information at the end of this program. So if they didn't get it and they don't remember the amounts for income, that they just have to fast forward to the end of the show and it will be visible
We also,
for
on our
them.
website too, we have all the information about all of our programs and the links to all the applications.
And I assume there's a phone number and an email on there too. Sometimes,
You can always, yep, we always pick up the phone.
yeah,
There's
I
always
think
a
sometimes
person on the
these
other end of the
issues,
line.
I think sometimes on these issues, people like to, it can be confusing, and talking to a person is really important.
And I think the message we want to get out there to seniors is there are long waits and it's not just Concord. Every town is like that.
Everywhere.
And that don't wait. I mean, as Mary Ann said, get calls on weekends that somebody says, I need a place Monday. You know, they're being evicted. They could no longer pay their mortgage and they waited till then to
Yeah.
come and tell me. And there's nothing I could do. And it is just the most devastating feeling to know that somebody's in dire circumstances and you can't do a thing to
Right.
help them.
Right.
So please don't wait.
Mary Ann, isn't there a shelter rule in Massachusetts? Aren't we the first state that has?
There used to be, I don't know if there still is, there was a right to shelter law so that if you needed a place to live, you would be put up in a hotel. I think one of the reasons why the state came up with a centralized wait list is they're trying to end homelessness, and they feel that that is one way to do it with the centralized wait list, because it gives everybody the opportunity to apply online themselves to many different housing authorities. I don't know if that right to shelter law is still, I actually don't know.
And what I found out is somebody came to me on a Friday night and it was a younger mom and her son. And it's a long, complicated story, but anyway, they were evicted. And I found out by calling every shelter from Boston through Springfield that you have to be screened during the day. And if you're not screened during the day, you can't go into a shelter that night. So, again, there was nothing I could do to help.
There is legislation in place to try to end the rule that you have to stay in an unsafe place for 24 hours before they'll take you into a shelter. And I think there's been, after 8 years, there's been some progress made on that. But, stay tuned. Maybe pay attention, pick up your phone and call your legislator on that
Always
one.
too, families, always send families our way, because we can work with families. We do have more availability. Our vacancy, our turnover is more. Seniors are tough, but families,
Good to know. Thank you so much
All
for
right.
coming.
We could probably talk for a while on this topic, but thank you for coming. Appreciate it. All right. So, okay, let's shift the focus a little bit and back to what's going on with the Council of Aging, and who wants to start out? David, why don't you start?
I'll go. I'll start off with food, because that seems to be a common theme, at least for our activities. We've got, and people will be generally familiar with this, we've got a variety of health, nutrition and food type of programs. One of them is, pardon me, called Restaurant Review. I'm staring right at it, which was started by Joanne Willens, and many people will remember Joanne as she no longer lives in Carlisle, but as a person who used to arrange transportation, and she loved arranging these what she called restaurant reviews, which are basically a trip out to dine at in a restaurant in one of the surrounding towns. So the February restaurant review that's coming up is going to be at Bamboo in Westford. And if you're interested, the van leaves at Congregational Church at about 11 a.m. and returns at about 2 p.m. And please call the Council on Aging van line at 978-371-6690 to register by Tuesday, January 28th. That's for the February.
The date of the event is, when did you say, when are they going?
Oh, they're going to Bamboo again in Westford.
When?
Oh, when? February 4th.
February 4th.
It's a Tuesday, yep.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. And also, there's going to be a trip to the Ixtapa Mexican Grill and Cantina in concert with the Scottish Masonic Museum and Library. And that is going to be on Wednesday, January 22nd. It's a free event to enter the museum. Have you been to the museum, Deb? I don't know. Is it
I
a good-
have. Although I'm always curious about what the connection to being Scottish is.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Is there maybe the Masons? Maybe there was a, yeah. I'm not sure, but I haven't been to that museum, but it's right near the Lexington Community Senior Center. So
It's in Lexington, yeah.
Yeah, it's right there. Van fee, we request a $2 donation, but if you can't afford our van fee, that's okay. Just let us know and we'll be fine. So if you're interested in that, please let us know. The trip leaves Congregational Church at 10:45 a.m. And is expected to get back at around 4 p.m. So that's kind of a long trip, even though it's not far away, because it's the lunch and the museum.
Mm-hmm.
And please call the COA van line if you're interested, 978-371-6690. And please register by January 15th.
So should we go on to some other food things?
let's
Because
do it.
I know our people love to eat. So every
Almost
month.
lunchtime, we'll get ready for lunch.
Okay. Every month we have a men's breakfast, which I conned my husband into cooking. And Chuck, who's recording with us today, helps. And the next one will be on February 13th. And it is at 8 o'clock at Village Court. So anybody of any age is welcome to join us. And we hope that they enjoy that. And then we have senior moments twice a month at Ferns. You can come, and the COA or Bridges provides free refreshments, and you just buy your own coffee, and Ferns gives a 10% discount to seniors. So that will be on February 10th and 24th. And then our monthly coffee is going to be put on by the police department in February, on February 5th, and that is also at the sleeper room at Village Court at 9 a.m. And then we do go to Neshoba Tech once a month, and the seniors love that, especially since David has been providing discounts so that they go get a lovely full-course meal with the choices of, in February, it's on the 26th, and they can get braised beef and ale or Dover sole or a vegetarian meal for the wonderful price of $5. And that comes with coffee and dessert, and everybody loves seeing the kids. And then our Chelmsford Crossing lunch, which is once a month, which is supported by Chelmsford Crossing and Minuteman Senior Services, will be on February 6th, and that's going to be lasagna. And after that, we have one of our volunteers is going to be giving a presentation on adaptive equipment that will help people. So if you happen to have arthritis or any other issue that is making it difficult for you to get around or do certain things, he has lots of suggestions to help people. So we're looking forward to all of those. And our COA lunch in February is a big deal, because it's also our Valentine Tea, which is supported by the National Charity League. We're going to have members there, and we're also going to have some Girl Scouts there doing favors. And so we're going to have Brian Kane, who's one of our Carlisle residents, singing. And it's always a really fun event.
Where is it this
It's
year?
going to be at FRS Union Hall.
All right, I know that
So the
place.
20th at 11:45, and maybe you can come. And we're also going to be doing the lunch at St. Patrick's Day on March 14th at CCHS, which the kids put on a Saturday. You can sign up for us and take the van or drive yourself over there. But the kids always do a great corned beef and cabbage, and it's a fun event, and they usually have some dancers, and so we hope people sign up for that. Maybe we should go to Jace and have her tell us a little bit what the Friend's up to.
Let's do that right now.
Oh,
Okay.
well, Happy New Year, everybody. We're happy at the Friends, and our fundraising drive is going well. We are still wide open for donations. You could mail donations to the Friends at P.O. Box 6, P.O. Box, that was my P.O. Box. No, P.O.
38.
Box 38. And we would be very grateful for it. We work very hard to support the seniors in town, along with David and Angela's guidance. And we provide fuel assistance to many homes. And we provide exercise groups, all different kinds of exercise groups for all ages and abilities. And we have socialization with the wonderful luncheons and breakfasts that David and Angela has told us about. And we pay attention to kind of monitoring health needs. And we go on trips. So we do a lot of wonderful things. One of the most popular things we do is with Gleason Public Library, have Carlisle Cultural Lectures. And this is the 16th annual year coming up, and we're proud to tell you that we are going to feature Vincent van Gogh. If you haven't met him and talked to him lately, you'll get a chance. Jane Blair is the artist, and she does an absolutely spectacular job. These lectures are held at St. Irene's, and as she talks to us, she puts the pictures up on the wall, and you feel like you've stepped into the era in which she's talking. And afterwards, she takes questions, and you can walk around at your leisure and look at the artwork again.
She's great. I
So-
mean, she I think for all levels of knowledge about the art. Okay, if you know a lot about the art, she'll be able to go to that depth and talk about it. But she's also able to explain it in fairly clear terms for people who don't know as much about the art. I think she does a great job. Yeah.
There's lots of room at St. Irene's too, and it's a huge turnout. So March 11th, Vincent van Gogh. March 18th, Symbolism and Expressions. And March 25th, Animals in Art. I think that's going to be very interesting through the ages. There was a statement that humans are the only ones that communicate with animals in art. I had to think about that because I don't know if chimpanzees can paint or whatever, but
Sure.
anyway, it's going to be fascinating. So again, we appreciate all your support, and we also ask you to support our staff. Our staff needs a lot of support. They do a tremendous job, and I think are under-recognized.
Yeah, what's the breadth? I'm always impressed with the number of donors that you get. You know what that number is? How many? What the?
It's a progress in motion right now.
Yeah, but normally, like in a normally, yeah.
I
I
don't.
know the list is long.
It's
but
a
when
long, it's about a page and three-quarters.
I know when I
of
see the list, I'm
single-spaced
very impressed.
people.
I think that's really a
We
broad-based
had
community
16
support.
new donors so far this year, which is interesting and which is up. And we also are working hard at our intergenerational programs and really trying to engage different age groups. We have on our board, actually, younger members now that have children in the school system, and we're thriving that way. We just feel so enriched with what their input is.
Tim, on that subject, if you don't mind me interrupt, because you just provided a pretty good segue. I forgot to mention this up top, and that's that some people here in Carlisle may know that we've been working on a feasibility study for a new community center based on grant money that we received from Chenal 15. And that feasibility study actually was just completed, and it hasn't been publicized yet. But I wanted to mention to keep your eyes peeled, because we're going to be publicizing the feasibility study. It's about a 40-page document, and since the master planning process is currently underway, we'll probably, in addition to introducing the feasibility study to the selectmen, make it part of the master planning process.
Actually, that was amazing. I was gonna ask you that question, the master planning process, when I think about that, is that the cornerstone of your input, or how is the input from either of your two, from the COA or the Friends, if any, how has that worked with the master planning process?
Well, so far, I can't speak to everybody. I know they had a community input day one evening at the school, Carlisle Public School, about a month.
I'm on the steering advisory committee, I think.
Okay, there you go. And how often are you meeting?
I'm not actually on they're about once a quarter.
Once a quarter. And then on the staffing end, we just had a meeting with the vendor. They're a company called Civic Moxie, and they met with the. I know it's a good name, but
Civic Moxie.
They had 4 of their representatives meet with us here in the Clark room. When I say us, I mean the department heads.
Yes.
With Tim. So you were getting a kind of a mixture of staff input and input from the community.
Is this for the master plan, or is this for the feasibility study?
It's for the master plan.
Okay.
I wish we could say that we were quite as engaged on the feasibility study, although we did have an advisory group, and we had people on the advisory group for the feasibility study from the Carlisle Public Schools, from Board of Health, from the Planning Board, the Council on Aging, and Recreation. Very important. Recreation was included in that. So the feasibility study will take a lot of things into account. There is a property picked out for the placement of the community center, but even if the town were to decide through the master planning process to choose another site, the feasibility study, it will still be valuable from the perspective that we talked a lot about what would we want to see in such a building, who would be using it.
I'm not as informed about the master planning process. Is the intention of the plan to get down to that level of specificity, the actual site?
Probably not on the master plan.
Yeah.
But from the point of view of the town owns other pieces of land,
Yes.
then there was some thought process about that.
Yeah.
For example, we had talked for a little while about using part of Spalding Field, and there was a lot of objection to that. And I'm not saying that's positive or negative. I'm just saying it was part of the process.
There will be objection to anything, but it's hard to ignore the fact of the aging of the town, okay? And it's not Carlisle, it's the aging of the country in many respects, in towns like Carlisle. And it seems to me those features have to be prominent parts of whatever a master plan for the community is. Yeah.
Another positive thing, before we jump back into our Council on Aging stuff, is that we did a 5-question survey, online survey through SurveyMonkey, and we had closing in on 400 responses, like 390 responses, and the responses were positive. By and large, they were like 80% positive towards a community center. We're calling it a multi-generational community center, because not just intergenerational, but multi-generational in that groups of people from different ages could be using it at the same time. They may or may not be interacting with each other, but they still could be using the building. But the interesting thing also about the responses was that the age distribution of the responses was not skewed in any one direction. We had 60-some people under 18 respond. We had 120, for example, from 35 to 44, and then from 45 to 54, another 120, and then in the older age region, it was another 120.
That's very healthy.
Yeah, it was very healthy, exactly.
Very healthy.
The only group that wasn't very well represented was the 18 to 34-year-olds, and I think
Because they aren't in town?
they're not in town as much. They go off for college, and then some of them come back, and some of them don't.
Scrape together enough money to live here.
That's better than scraping together money to live in Boston.
Right.
Right.
A
Well,
little
anyway,
bit.
thank you
A
for
little bit.
allowing that segue, Tim. A couple things coming up. If you need help with your tax returns and you are an older adult or senior, there is a service that the AARP Foundation provides where they train tax aides to, if you have a fairly simple tax return, but you don't have the wherewithal to do it yourself or would feel more comfortable getting some help. We don't do this. Is one of the very few things we don't do ourselves here in Carlisle, but we have a good enough relationship with our neighbors. And you could call us, or you could call, I should say, the Senior Center in Bedford at 781-275-6825. Bedford's one of the sites, and the other site is the Chelmsford Library. It's actually the Bedford Library and the Chelmsford Library. And the Chelmsford is in our newsletter, but it's 781-275-9440.
That's good, because I think that both with the changes last year, I think people sort of reacted to them last year, but they're becoming, I think, more prominent this year in terms of the changes to the actual tax process. And the investment economy, there might be some surprises related to income that was generated by forced capital gains to people. So I think it's good to, if there is a surprise in your taxes on the first path, you should get help, right?
Right.
And those slots fill up very quickly. So if you want a slot in April, the beginning of April, you should be calling now and scheduling it, because once they're full, they're gone.
Yeah.
So don't wait till you have all your information and you're ready to go. Make your appointment and then get all your stuff together.
Right. It's free, but as Angela said, and it's an excellent point, best to register ahead of time.
Yeah.
Even if it's a couple months out, you can reserve a slot in your name. Concord. Speaking of Concord, the Concord Players are having a senior dress rehearsal of their next show, Barefoot in the Park. It is going to be Thursday, February 6th at 8 p.m. It's $5 at the door, but $5 to see a show? It's not bad.
Yeah. It's Barefoot, it's Robert Redford and Jane Fonda.
Jane
right?
Fonda, exactly.
We went to the first one, and it was extraordinary. I didn't know what I was going to expect, but the quality was
And it's not well
outstanding.
attended.
It was a
It's
funny
very
girl.
sad.
It's a funny girl, and it was great. And I think you'll enjoy. We're going to all three of them.
Did Barbara Streisand make an appearance?
She was there.
Excellent.
Well, before we get to exercise, maybe I can just quickly highlight a few other things. Bob Supnick, who is one of our technical gurus, is doing a program on taming Windows 10 on Tuesday, February 11th at 1:30 at the Gleason Public Library. That's open to all. Windows 7, Windows 8 is no longer supported. You need to upgrade to 10. So you come and Bob will tell you all about it and whether you have a computer that is upgradable.
And it is different.
And it is
very
different. But, once you're used to it, it's okay.
And I just need to do a shout out to Bob Supnick. Our volunteers are great in general, but Bob really tries to help people to the best of his ability. And it's, he spends a significant amount of time with people trying to get things right.
We're very lucky.
Yeah.
So we also have two knitting groups. One is the Gleason Knitters that are available at the Gleason Public Library on the first and third Friday of every month at 10:15. And then once a month, we do knitting and service in concert with FRS. And the next meeting is February 20th at 7:30, and that is always at a member's home. So if you call us at the COA, we'll tell you where to go. And then we have our social hour once a month at Benfield at February 10th at 2:30. And we have a French conversation group that we've started that seems to be very well attended. And that's going to be January 24th, February 7th, and February 21st at 3 p.m. on a Friday. So there's various levels of people who speak lots of French or a little French and go and just chat and have a good time. We have free Reiki. That will be on February 11th at Benfield, and that is for Carlisle residents only. But we're also doing an acupuncture demo with a woman who lives in Carlisle, has her acupuncture office in Acton, and she's going to do these quarter-hour to a half-hour demos. So if you've never had acupuncture but you'd like to try it, you can come do that. And that
Try it, or is she showing it on an example?
No, she's going to do 4 people at a time. So
Okay.
you can actually try it. And if you've
All right.
never done it, I love it. And I highly recommend it.
All right, there you go.
So, come try it, give us a call and schedule an appointment. David, you want to talk quickly about exercise?
Yep, we just had the 5-minute announcement, so I'm guessing we have about 4 minutes left. On Mondays, every day of the week, we have some exercise program. We want people to know that. And the recreation department does as well. And sometimes we share our exercise programs with them, and sometimes it's just mainly COA. But our first exercise on Monday is tap dancing, and we call it an intergenerational event because you don't have to be a senior to want to know how to dance, particularly tap dancing, which is kind of a specialty. But people who do it really, really love it. It's Mondays at FRS at 1:30. It's taught by Katrina Rotundi, who does quite a few of our classes. And we use FRS for its wonderful wooden floor in Union Hall. On Tuesdays, there's two activities. They're both at St. Irene's. We spread the joy here. We've got a Zumba Gold class at 10:45, again taught by Katrina at St. Irene's, and then at 12:30 we have a Tai Chi class, which is taught by Linda Sango. On Wednesdays we have a yoga class, and that's the one that we operate in conjunction, or I should say the recreation department operates, that we
Right.
kind of join on in. And I believe we offer, what is it, about
We're at
10
discount through the Friends.
That's right. To give a plug to our friends, we offer a discount that we fund through the Friends group. So if you want to do yoga and pay a little bit less, then
Considerably less.
considerably less, then consider the yoga class at 9:30. That's at Benfield Farms. At 1:45, back at St. Irene's, we have a line dancing class. And on Thursdays, we have fitness and cardio boost classes right here in Town Hall in this room, the Clark Room. And they're amongst our most popular classes, the fitness and cardio boost. You can do them separately, or you can do one right after another. They start at 9:45, and then the second class is at 10:45. And on Fridays, we have a SAMA class, which is Senior Approach to Martial Arts, Senior Approach to Maintaining Agility.
Okay.
Again, it's right here in Town Hall. It used to be martial arts.
Yeah.
They used to. They
Sort of
used
the same thing.
Yeah, they wanted to do a sword training program, but we thought
Yeah.
maybe that wasn't a great idea here at Town Hall. But the SAMA class is great. Wonderful instructor. Did you know that Sensei Sarah has just gotten engaged to be married?
Yeah, I did.
It's very, very, that's what social media is good for, is these happy announcements. Yeah. Anyway, that's at 10:45 in the morning, and that's a very popular class. And then in the later in the morning, there's a cheer volleyball class, which is kind of on hiatus.
No,
Isn't it?
no, they're still doing it.
Oh, they are still doing it,
Yeah,
okay.
January and February.
And that's the newest class, Tim, is chair volleyball.
Those are great pictures in the paper, I'll tell you. I see people playing.
They're
chair
having a
volleyball.
good time.
Yeah,
There's
looks
lots of
looks like
laughter.
fun. Looks
The
like fun.
challenge is to stay in the chair, I
Right,
hear.
right.
And that's at our FRS, so.
For little kids and older kids, right? Challenges stay in the chair.
Exactly. Tim, we also have a program through the Board of Health, which is fairly new. It just started this past year. We have a public health nurse, which again was initially funded through CHNA, and the Board of Health is trying to come up with funding through, I think, the community chest for the rest of the year. And that's for Carlisle residents of all ages. It's not necessarily just for seniors. But they, on Wednesday, January 15th, there's a session from 6:30 to 8:30. And if you just want to come and ask a question about it to a nurse, one-on-one, rather than feeling like you have to call your doctor's office for every single thing, then this is an opportunity to talk with her one-on-one in a community setting, but still have some privacy. And our public health nurse, Tricia McGeen, is that how you pronounce Patricia's name?
I believe so.
And she also works in Concord part-time and in Lincoln part-time. So we are sharing the wealth between Concord and Carlisle to the best of our ability. We've got blood pressure clinics at all of our food events, or most of our food events, the men's breakfast, COA coffee, the Chelmsford Crossing lunch, and the COA lunches, plus senior moments over at Fern's, as we have blood
Right.
pressure. We have a podiatry clinic. The next one won't be till March, right? And that will be announced in the new newsletter. Haircuts to go, February 24th, is right here at Town Hall in the Clark Room. We have walking. It's
We're
12.
getting close to noon.
Yeah, it's got to be close to noon. Walking at Carlisle Public School, 6:45 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. Please call the Facilities Department at 978-371-2279 if you would like to walk. And outdoor walking, do they still have that?
Yep. If the weather's doable that they can walk safely, they will.
I think we covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
Remember Earth Day, April 26th,
22nd
And I think
and
we're-
26th.
22nd, and
I think we're
26th.
reaching the end of our plank. So,
That's it.
so this was I think a good summary of the amazing things that are going on in the Council on Aging. And I think, as always, thank you to you guys for making it happen. Okay, it's easy to read off the list, but I'm sure in executing all these programs, there's a lot more detail and work involved with all of it. So thank you very much for doing that. And thank you to everyone who tuned in and listened to the program this month. The next program is, do you know?
I don't know the exact date in February, but it is, I believe, the third Wednesday in February.
Third Wednesday in February. Do we have our program yet? Do
Yep, we do. And of course, I'm drawing a blank as to
Okay.
what we're doing.
Is that the judge?
No, he's in March.
He's in March. We have a
No.
judge coming in
It'll
March.
be great, whatever it is. So.
Thank you, Tim.
Oh, we're doing acupuncture.
The acupuncture, more
company.
acupuncture, okay. So
Sorry about that.
that'll happen in February, and winter is beginning. Be careful with ice and snow, and make good judgments about moving around outside, but have a great time. Enjoy the beautiful, beautiful environment in Carlisle over the weekend, or over the winter, excuse me. And thank you all for
This
listening.
weekend was pretty cool as well, or rather, pretty warm.
All right, with that, we'll sign off. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank
Great
you.
job.